Namaskaram. Welcome back. In the last video, I talked about how to recognize a missionary. Given the reality that every Christian is a missionary on a prowl in search of a prey, is there anything we can do to not only shield ourselves but also combat these vicious attacks? The first thing we can do is to be convinced without a shadow of doubt that every so-called kind gesture of a Christian is driven by an agenda to proselytize, and that every person a Christian comes in contact with is a potential convert. These converts are recruited with an agenda to expand the territory of the church. In this video, I will talk about what I have seen happen to people, especially young girls who fell into this Jesus loves you brigade's trap. Some of the details that I'm going to share now are about real people with whom I have interacted with at different levels at different times. I wish that I had some way of exposing the evil that is happening in Christian communities without having to disclose these people's stories. Unfortunately, there is no other way to truly convey the magnitude of the wrongdoings that Christians are capable of doing to their victims if I stayed away from narrating these stories. If you recollect, in my last video, I talked about how a Christian is always on the job of recruiting people into Christianity. I also talked about a scenario of a total stranger picking up a conversation with a person sitting next to her in a bus to talk about Jesus. I know of a woman, let's call her Lata, who was recruited in this manner by someone who went out of her way to talk to Lata to bring her to church. The incident happened more than 35 years ago. Lata had a 4-year-old daughter, and let's call her Mani. At the time Lata was approached by this stranger, she was going through a very big crisis. She had just lost her husband who took his own life. A Christian lady from the church that I grew up in befriended Lata. It didn't take much time for Lata, who was a Hindu, to get converted to Christianity through this stranger. Once the conversion was complete, Lata, along with her 4-year-old daughter Mani, moved to live in the church. This church had a ladies' hostel where 20 other unmarried girls, all under the age of 30, were living, and Lata and her daughter lived in that hostel. This ladies' hostel is just a shed where each of these young women had a small place allotted to them to keep their belongings. All of these women were similarly recruited and were now living here inside the church, as they couldn't live with their own parents, as their parents were still Hindus or some kind of nominal Christians. The bottom line is that these unmarried women were brainwashed to believe that there is no safer place to live outside the 4 walls of this church in order for them to carry on their Christian journey. At least that's what they believed. They could not live in their own homes where they grew up. Almost all of these women had some decent education to go and earn a livelihood for themselves. Most of them were either teachers or nurses, and were recruited by the churches just around the time they finished their education and were ready to get jobs. What this means is that these women, who are now making some money using the education that their parents have provided them with, are now cut off from their families just around the time when they started working. So these women were in no way a financial burden on this church. On the other hand, they were a big asset because they not only paid for their own expenses but also paid 10% of their income and other money to the church. In addition to all these women were free labor that the church had at its disposal to use them in whichever way that it deemed fit. These women were free labor because all of their free time was spent in upkeep of the church property, such as sweeping, mopping and dusting. They also had to cook, clean and do all the housekeeping jobs in the church. In some sense, all of these women were some glorified servant maids who were at the beck and call of the church leaders. Some of these women were even sent to go and help out the church members and their families who lived outside this church compound to take care of the needs of the church members. These girls were like contract laborers, leased out to families at no charge whatsoever, as and when the church members needed help. Bear in mind that some of these young women did come from wealthy Hindu families and were sitting in this church doing these menial jobs while duping themselves that all of what they're now doing is God's work. Lata was one such. While she was in the transition of moving into this church compound, we happened to go visit Lata's home. I distinctly remember that visit as it was the first time I visited a poultry farm. Yes, Lata was a wealthy woman and her family owned this farm that was on a sprawling ground with a decent sized house on the same property. Lata was also an educated woman who had done her diploma course that could have easily fetched her a decent job. Lata was a strikingly beautiful woman as well. What Lata needed was a little nudge to get over the hump to become self-sufficient, to support herself and her daughter, which I'm sure is what she expected the church to do. But the church had its own agenda in giving shelter to this woman and her daughter. Once inside the church compound, Lata had to toe the line and do what the church wanted her to do. Within no time, she became the main cook and a kitchen manager in that church compound, and that was her full-time job. I would see her quite often in the markets and on the roads with a basket in her hand, buying and carrying vegetables and other supplies for the kitchen that she managed inside the church compound. The food made in this church compound kitchen not only fed the pastor and his family, but also fed all the church delegates who visited the church from time to time. I would sometimes see her late in the night sitting in front of the grindstone, grinding big batches of batter. The reason I share these minute details about Lata is for you to get an idea of how much time this mother got to spend with her only daughter that she dragged into this church along with her, with a firm conviction and belief that the church compound is going to be the safest place on earth for her and her daughter. Yet, this unfortunate lady did not even have time to take care of her only child, as she was so consumed with doing God's work, which in her case was being the cook who made exotic food for God's servants. Within a few years of moving into the church compound, Lata lost her only daughter. What started as a simple leg pain for her daughter, who was 12 years old at the time, ended up taking the child's life away. A delay in diagnosis and a timely treatment for some kind of a disease involving the spinal cord of the child eventually paralyzed her neck down. After a prolonged struggle, the child died at the age of 13. While it was a personal tragedy for Lata, whose only child life ended abruptly, the church now won a full-time maid and nanny. Lata had no limitations whatsoever, as she was now a free bird with no personal responsibilities or obligations. Within a few years of her daughter's passing, Lata was packed off from Hyderabad and was moved to some place in northeast India, where this church was getting ready to set up an empire. She was sent there along with a young lady who took up a job in a college as a lecturer. Lata doubled up both as a caretaker and a housemaid for this lecturer. Incidentally, this young lecturer had some serious health complications which got precipitated during her stay in the northeast India, and within few years of shifting and living there, the young lecturer herself died. Lata, who was this lecturer's housekeeper, was up again for grabs to move on to her next assignment. Lata's story did not end there, as there was one other big job waiting for her. This assignment was slightly different than her earlier jobs. The biggest use of Lata came a few years later when the church's first family decided to get rid of the pastor who built a branch of this church in Hyderabad from ground up. Just like we have first family in politics, there are also first families in churches. These are usually the members of the families that founded a church. For them, Running of a church is like running a family business that needs to be closely monitored and controlled. This particular church's founding family used one trick consistently anytime it decided to cut to size and expel a long-time worker. They called him an evangelist. This particular evangelist in Hyderabad built this branch of the church in Hyderabad from nothing. In some 20 odd years, the evangelist not only had 2000 plus strong crowd, but also managed to raise enough money to build a permanent structure on a prime property in one of the affluent areas of Hyderabad. When the first family targets a person, the trick they use is to accuse the person of sexual misbehavior. The first family was now employing this dirty trick to get rid of the local pastor in Hyderabad. The reason? He was getting to become too popular, and the first family saw him as a threat. The family didn't have to look far to frame this local pastor. It had a whole army of women who could be put to use to wage this war. Lata and the many women who ever lived in that church compound were puppets who are at the beck and call of the first family to malign the evangelist. It was not enough for these church leaders to get confessions out of the present inmates of the hostel. They also went back to every woman who lived in that ladies' hostel to launch this maligning campaign. Many of these women were married by then and had growing children. Some of them still lived in Hyderabad while others were sent out to different places around the country to build this church's empire. Some lived out of the country. Distance didn't matter when first family needed to get something done. All of these women were just a call away and were systematically put to work. This time the work was rather simple, and all that they had to do was to talk to the first family members and tell them as to how the church pastor in Hyderabad misbehaved with them. Lata, the unhinged one, was perhaps the first in line to be put to use to do this dirty work. Once these so-called confessions were extracted, all hell was let loose in that church. The evangelist was forced out. While the first family got what it wanted, all of these women were now on their own to fight their own battles. They had to come up with their own justifications as to why they did not open their mouths about all of these alleged sexual misbehaving until now. Many of these women, seeing that they were conned into making these confessions, tried to do some damage control, but the verdict was already out, and the damage was done to the pastor and his family. Juicy stories of the pastor's alleged sexual misbehavior became talk of the town. All the growing children in that church got to hear all these porn stories that were now broadcast from church pulpits as part of church sermons. The tragedy was, most of the women the pastors talked about in their sermons were the mothers of these growing children in that church. I shudder to even imagine what those women went through. A person like Lata was scorned, shamed, and taunted by the holier than thou crowd, who gossiped endlessly that some of these women who were part of this confession gang may all have had some secret affairs while living in this church compound. Especially given her good looks, the chances of a beautiful lady like Lata staying away from indulging in carnal pleasures seemed rather unlikely to many church saints who got promoted to become judges and moral policemen when this mudslinging campaign was underway in full force. This is not the story of just one Lata. This pretty much is the story of many women whose lives have turned into living hells. Just like Lata, they all live in a delusion that their reward is in heaven. If you perhaps go and talk to Lata today, she will probably tell you that Christianity has given her this great assurance and hope that she will one day get reunited with her daughter in heaven. The tricks that Christianity plays with people's minds are truly mind-boggling. I have seen them all right from my childhood. For those that don't know, I grew up in an evangelical church in India, And all of what I'm talking about comes from my direct experience with Christianity. When I talk about some of these things, many Christians become upset and go as far as to dismiss my Christian experience, claiming that it was an outlier and an inaccurate representation of true Christianity. Many of these people who self-certify themselves as true Christians are consumed with anger after seeing my videos and resort to what they know to do best, which is to hurl abuses directed at me and my family. I thought I will mention this. No amount of taunting is going to stop me. Those of you who are upset with what I am exposing need to do whatever it takes to clean your own churches while I continue to expose the filth that is piling up in your churches and other Christian communities. Christians are hardly my focus when I make these videos. My focus is to educate my Hindu brothers and sisters to be certain that they never become victims of Christian predation. While I share these stories, my intention is not to expose the individuals. My friends, I do this so that gullible Hindus can open their eyes to see the dangers lurking at their doors. The systemic evils of the church are part of a much bigger agenda that many people cannot even comprehend. The vicious attacks of Christians on our dharma is multi-pronged. On one hand, they are actively working to break away people from their Hindu families and relatives. On the other hand, they are also building Christian families. What many don't realize is that these individuals who are separated from their families, culture, heritage, and ancestral roots are now reconfigured to build Christian communities. These newly built communities of Christians are engineered to do pretty much anything the church leaders want to accomplish, starting from organizing a protest to shut down an infrastructure project that is in the interest of the nation to demanding that they be allowed to carve out their own Christian country out of Bharat like it is happening in Nagaland. Christians are not just breaking our Hindu families, but are also building families and communities with individuals that they manage to convert to Christianity. The families that are built by the church imbibe a whole different value system that is both alien and at odds with family and societal values that are intertwined with our dharma and its rich culture. Their attack is on the building blocks of our society, and that is our families. Now you might ask how these vicious agendas of the church are accomplished using Christian teachings from the Bible. How does church manage to break away individuals from their families? What theology does church use to alienate individuals from their families to such an extent that these converted Christians start hating their own family members? This Bible verse sums it all up. This is Luke 14, chapter 14, verses 25 and 26. It reads like this. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he, as in Jesus, said, If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. These words are straight from the horse's mouth. None other than the very Jesus uttered these words. To hate one's own family was a call given by Jesus, as it is recorded in the Bible. This command of Jesus gives the doctrinal basis to train the new converts to hate everything about their families. It is not just poverty that makes people perpetually vulnerable. Deaths, prolonged sicknesses, troubles in professional and domestic lives, failures in examinations are all the things that can make people vulnerable at a time they're going through a rough phase. If you sense that if your relatives, friends, co-workers, and anybody with whom you have any personal connection is going through a rough time, extend your help in any way possible. And this will surely keep these vultures at bay. Remember that it is not just financial help that people need to get over a crisis. All they need is a shoulder to lean on till they get back on their feet. If you can lend your shoulder just for a little bit to a friend or a relative in need, please do not hesitate to do so. For all you know, your act of kindness is all that can stand between the individual who is having a rough time and a Christian missionary who is waiting to exploit the situation. But for your help, this individual might be taken as a hostage to be made into a puppet in the hands of the church, to turn him against his own family and, more importantly, his own motherland, Bharat. In my next talk, I will talk about how churches build communities using these young converts whose marriages they control. It is not just the wedding that the church conducts, but controls the entire married life of those who get trapped into these Christian churches. We'll talk about that in the next talk. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Stay safe. Thank you.